going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza podcast. We are back, top of the league this week after a big 2-0 victory over Lazio. Top of the league, which at some point so far this season felt like impossible or a distant memory. And here we are. We are back top of the league in our rightful position. And I think based off this performance, you can see that Inter, actually based off the past couple weeks of Serie A action, you can see now the league is still kind of becoming into its own as far as the table and title race goes. But we're at that point, getting to that point, I should say, of the season where you're finding who's the pretenders and who's the contenders. And I think, without a doubt, Inter is one of the most legitimate contenders in this title race. And it's tough to really see at this point who is going to be the biggest contender with them. So we'll dive into this big Lazio match right now, starting out with the lineups. We started with Jan Sommer in goal, Akanji, and the big one that I think a lot of people maybe weren't sure of going into this match, who was going to start in the center back position. I think De Vrij played pretty decent midweek against Kairat, or Kairat, however you pronounce the Kazakh side in the Champions League that we squeaked by. Acerbi had been struggling as of late, and then Bisek had played pretty decent as the center back. So there's a lot of question marks there. Who does Kivu go with? He goes with Inzaghi's trusty man, and it seems like the guy that has played all the big matches this year for Inter as well, in Francesco Acerbi. Bastoni, obviously, that left center back position. We go through that midfield five. Denzel Dumfries, Barella, Çalhanoğlu. I don't think there's any arguments there. The one that was a big talking point maybe coming in was who was going to replace Mkhitaryan. Was it going to be Zielinski, who has scored a cracker last week and has put in some great performances as of late? Sucic, who rarely puts a foot wrong, it seems like, sometimes doesn't dictate the play or do anything out of the ordinary or extra, but he rarely puts a foot wrong. Or Fratesi, the guy who's just going to drive forward and try and bring an extra body into the box to try and get a goal. And Kivu went with Sucic in a big match, maybe makes sense, with Di Marco, the man on form, at left wing back, and then Lautaro paired with Anjan Bonnet up top. So pretty decently strong lineup for Inter. Like I said, the big question marks there were Acerbi at center back, Sucic, and then maybe you could say either Pio or Boni. I think that one wasn't as big of a debate, considering how Pio as of late has his form has kind of dropped a little bit. But Boni was trusted paired with Lautaro. First half, we didn't have to wait long. Honestly, we had a couple big, I wouldn't say big chances, but the high press that we had put on to start the match was giving Lazio all sorts of fits, and it was working to our favor really early, and we didn't have to wait long. It was the third minute. That high press against Sucic was up pretty high, pressing, I want to say it was Lazzari, their right wing back, and it led to Bastoni somehow. Sucic, I think he's the one that won the ball, and Bastoni was up high too to receive the interception or whatever it was, and he found a beautiful pass for Lautaro, who was in the box but holding his run, not going deep into the box, kind of checking his run up a little bit, and the finish. My goodness, this is the thing with Lautaro. And I think you hear other analysts say this, and it's frustrating because he puts a finish like this, where the technique and the skill to be able to come across the ball like he did and have that curve. It was almost like he was cutting through the ball with his right foot, and the technique and the curve to place that in the corner as well. It's a finish that not many strikers in the world can complete. And he's one of the few that can, which makes him world class without a doubt. But then, you juxtapose that. We'll talk a little later about other chances he has, and he doesn't put away the easy chance. But make no mistake about it, and we're not taking anything away from Lautaro here. It was an absolute belter and beauty of a goal to get Inter up 1-0 super early. And you could see what it means to Lautaro. He is that captain. We've talked about it many times on here. He is the pulse, the heartbeat, the strength of this squad, and truly, one of the few in this squad that is absolutely world class on his day. And that type of goal is what separates him from everybody else in Serie A. And it was a brilliant all around goal from the pressing to the finish. There was nothing Providel could have done, and it was absolutely insane. And we get up 1-0 early, and I think the announcer said it as well. Lazio has to change their tactics and what they wanted to do now when you go down 1-0 early. And it's a great thing for Inter to go up 1-0 early, because then maybe we aren't having to stretch ourselves out as much and get caught in that transitional phase that kills us a lot of times. Even in this match, it kind of did. Maybe we could sit back a little deeper. Just depends. Kivu kept that high line, though, it seemed like, for the rest of the match, and it worked versus Lazio. After that goal in the 8th minute, Lautaro missed a header that maybe he should have done better with. And then in the 18th minute, this is what I'm talking about the transition. Lazio hit us on the counter. They found Zaccagni out wide on the left side. It's that point where the midfield, and it's always the midfield where these transitions get us. That midfield is so stretched forward, um, that you have the center backs and the wing backs, which at this point it was Dumfries and Akanji, backing off because they're waiting for Barella to try and get back to put pressure on Zaccagni. Well, Barella is so high up the pitch because we're playing that way that you can see him sprinting back, but at a certain point it's too late where you're running back. So are the other two defenders, and Zaccagni's running, and he cuts in, and he ends up getting good amount of space to cut in and dribble right in the middle of the top of the box, and have a free shot, which he really should have done better there. And that's the issue with Inter. It's been this way since the last year and a half. Whenever we won the Scudetto and had that awesome defensive record, we weren't giving up transition goals like this. I think a lot of the time during that season, we played more on the counter ourselves and didn't try and dominate teams. We tried to soak up the pressure and then hit them on the counter because we're a great counter-attacking team. So we weren't getting caught out as much. And then something happened, some tactics changed, whatever. And it seems like now that's where we're the most susceptible. Well, maybe one of the most susceptible. We'll talk about another thing here in a minute where we're most susceptible. But on this transition and stuff, the midfield, I don't know if it's their fault or if maybe Akanji needs to step, um, and cut that out before it gets to the point where Zaccagni can, or any other player can, start really driving at that back line. Um, yeah, I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments where do you think the fault is, if it's midfield getting caught out too high or if it's the back line not stepping soon enough. That's one of the big things it seems like we always, in every game, are getting caught out at, is that transition. We're getting countered too easily. But luckily, it didn't hurt us there. And then in the 25th minute, we're countering again. We actually found ourselves on the counter. And Baralla, he's had a tough time as of late, Nicolo Baralla, minus that Cremonese game where he was absolutely world class. Best player on the park, in my opinion, should have won man of the match. I get why Boni won it because he had 3 assists and a goal. But if you go back and watch that Cremonese match, Nicolo Barella was the best player on the pitch by far, and probably one of the best performances I've seen from a midfielder in a long time. He's had a rough going though since then. Some really bad matches, especially that Fiorentina match. That was one of the worst matches I think I've ever seen Barella play. He misplaced passes everywhere, didn't look comfortable, looked exhausted, was losing out in one-on-one battles and duels. But I think he's had a decent game here and a pretty good game. And he found a beautiful chip over the top, ever so deft, over the top to Sucic, one touch, kind of like half volley, side foot. Really should have done better and tested Provedel there, but it was a good chance. He did better than maybe we would have seen with Mkhitaryan. Mkhitaryan would have put it in the canal in Navili outside of Milan and wouldn't have even gotten close to the goal. So I applaud Susic for even getting a chance there. And really, Inter goes into the half, the better team. And other than that Zaccagni thing, there really wasn't much threat from Lazio. And that maybe was due, in fact, to a tactic, it seemed like, put out by Kivu to try and limit that counter from Lazio was the fouling. This was the most physical Inter I can remember in a long time, maybe until Spalletti days or something, where our midfield was Vicino and Gagliardini, where we had a little bit of, albeit not great, but a little bit of steel in there, and we were, less skill, more steel, I guess you could say. But this, I mean, the game had no flow after that, first 10 to 15 minutes. It was a really boring, choppy match with fouls getting called everywhere on the pitch, mainly against Inter. And it seemed like, I mean, it continued into the second half. And it seemed like maybe this was a strategy that Kivu wanted to employ. And it makes sense. Listen, we had the chance to go into this international break, top of the league. All you have to do is win this match, and you go top of the league going into this big break before a big derby match, too, against Milan. Why not prevent Lazio from hitting out and getting out on the counter, which is the one thing, like I've mentioned, it seems like you're susceptible at. Why not, before that hit can even happen, chop them down and stop any transition from happening? So I think that was a big thing that Kivu put into the squad going into this match. Almost more of a Palombo. And that was kind of the player he was when he played for Sampdoria, even at Inter. He was a very aggressive midfielder, wasn't afraid to give up a foul in the middle of the park. And maybe that was from him instead of Kivu. But it makes sense logically and tactically when you think about it. How can we win this match at all cost? Well, what's the one thing we suck at is getting beat on transition. Let's hack them down, take a yellow if we need to. We have 5 subs. We have the best depth in the league. Hack them down, prevent them from getting out of the counterattack. And that was one thing I noticed at halftime, and it definitely continued into the second half as well. Interesting to see. I don't know if you guys thought that maybe was a tactic or just the referee was calling it really tight. I think most of the foul calls were right. I think he was a little spotty on his card giving. Some of the fouls I don't think warranted a card, and then some of the fouls I think did warrant a card. But um, yeah, I think the ref didn't have a bad game this match. But then we go into the second half, and in the 53rd minute, Guendouzi, I think the guy's a good player, but man, does he piss me off? And maybe it's just with the hair. He's just always bitching, and his hair. He's one of the most annoying players in Serie A. Like I said, I think he's a decent player and not bad. But God, he's just so annoying. But he finds space on top of the box, and he released a shot. Luckily, it was a very tame and soft shot, and Sommer had it covered pretty well, though. Good anticipation by Sommer. But he had, again, this midfield. It's always on the midfield. Guendouzi had pretty good space there to unleash a shot. And then 58th minute, and this is where we were talking about Lautaro earlier and how he can put away a finish that seems impossible. What was the one in the Club World Cup? Was it against Liver Plate or Urawa? One of those matches where maybe even Monterrey, I don't think it was Monterrey, but the bicycle off the corner, like 99 out of 100 players in top level football can't redirect a pass like that off of a corner. I'd say 90 out of 100 strikers in world football can't strike a ball like that first goal in the 3rd minute of this Lazio game, like Lautaro did. But then this one was a way easier chance in the 58th minute. Barella played it to Lautaro, who was kind of at the edge of the area, maybe in between that penalty spot and the top of the box, but really in the middle of that box. And he unleashes a right footed shot, which is his favorite foot, and doesn't even get it on target. And this is one, if he buries this, it's an easier chance than that first chance where he actually scored. If he buries this, the game's all but done and dusted. And these are these chances throughout this season and last season that Inter have missed, and then it comes back to bite us in the ass. Luckily, it didn't this match, but Lautaro, you've got to put these chances away. I bet if you looked at the end of the season and last season, as far as XG, this guy probably should be running away with the Capocannoniere every year just based off XG because he makes some crazy shots and scores and makes them look easy, and then he misses some absolute sitters. But, and this is a big but, and this is why we always forgive him, the effort he puts in is second to none. So again, it sucks when he misses shots like this, but I think it was this match. No, it was the match midweek where Lautaro against Kairat somehow found his way out into the Dumfries right wing back position and shut down the left midfielder for Kairat and put in a good tackle to force a corner. Like, what other striker in world football is tracking all the way back to do that? So that is why we forgive you, Lautaro, for missing some sitters like this. But it is frustrating from time to time. Um, then Kivu made his first subs. Zielinski and Carlos Augusto come in for Petr Sucic and Denzel Dumfries. And the interesting thing here, well, we'll get on the interesting thing after that. But shortly after that, we didn't have to wait much longer after those subs for our second goal. And I think more so than the goal, the pass from DiMarco was absolutely unbelievable. Started with Barella again, like I said, had a good game. Started with him in the midfield. This goal plays a beautiful outside of the right boot pass out to Lautaro, who found his way somehow in that left wing back position that DiMarco usually takes up. Where was DiMarco? He was taking up that position that Lautaro is usually at. So a little bit of positional interchange there. And DiMarco made a brilliant run. That's something I like when DiMarco picks up that space up there. He, not having that striker mentality, he makes different runs than Lautaro, Boni, Turam, Pio make. And it was a really intelligent run in behind from DiMarco. Great ball to slip in from Lautaro. And the pass, I mean, DiMarco is kind of running away from where he's ending up passing the ball. So it's not an easy skill at all. And he finds just literally the perfect space in between Romagnoli and Provadel. And it was just an absolute class ball on the ground. Literally all Boni had to do was just stand there. That's how good of a pass it was from DiMarco. And Inter goes up 2-0. Boni gets a goal. Well deserved, I think. Boni had a great game. And yeah, Inter's up 2-0. And at this point, it's that point in the match where we're getting a little confident, and as Inter fans we know what can happen, but everything seemed to be going well, and we get our third goal, and that kills off the match, or so it seems. In the 66th minute, Inter win the ball back in our defensive third. Transition, ball finds its way outside. I want to say maybe it found its way out to Carlos Augusto, who had picked up that right wing back position from Dumfries, and slots over to Zielinski, top of the box, 20, 25 yards out, plays it onto his left foot, strikes it across goal. Provedel nowhere near the ball and slots it home for the third goal. Zielinski, 2 goals in 2 matches in the league, both absolute great goals. I mean, we could talk about that one off the corner that was absolutely insane, but this one was really good as well. Just a class finish, and this is what Zielinski brings. And unfortunately, VAR has to step in and ruin a great goal for Zielinski. Hopefully, this doesn't diminish his confidence because he's growing into it. But we'll talk about first the VAR decision, then we'll talk about Zielinski. I get that DiMarco handballed the ball, and that's something that the ref should have cut out. I mean, the sideline official is right there, the center ref. It happens right in the middle of both of them. The fourth official's even there because it's close to that sideline. How there's 3 eyes there and they didn't catch that, A, is a travesty. B, the ball went through at least 5 or 6 Inter players. It took another 30 seconds before Zielinski even latched onto it. I don't know how you can say that that is in the attacking phase to rule it back out. It's not our fault. Lazio had 30 seconds to win the ball back or disrupt our attacking pattern, and it's not our fault that they couldn't do that. I think it was it's one of those you can see why they did it, but I think if you're logically trying to think about it, it's 30 seconds really, maybe 20, 25 seconds. But there was enough time for Lazio to reorganize, shut us down, and make us not go or just kill off this attack. And the fact that it gets called back after something that long, I don't like. But luckily, it didn't affect the outcome of the match. Let me know, you guys, in the comments what you think about that goal being overturned. But going with Zielinski now, this is a guy we need to start playing week in and week out. Sucic, I'm glad he got a start. It shows faith that Kivu has in him in a big match. This was a big match, but I was a little shocked not to see Zielinski here. And Zielinski has been playing really good, and he just offers. You see the turns that he makes, even when he comes in to get out of trouble. His turns, he's so quick on a turn where something that looks like he's got four defenders around him, and he just makes a quick turn and he's out, and then there's no one else around him to relieve that pressure off of himself and the rest of the team. And then the passes he makes. And I mentioned this a little bit on the last podcast, and I know I commented on after the Karat game on Uncle Sharma's live thing, and he had a little discussion about it. But just the intelligence and the passing that Zelensky has versus the other midfielders, I think when you see, especially in that Mezzala role, Barella and Mkhitaryan, we've gotten used to them over the past 3 or 4 years. And I think they've gotten used to the position as well, where they're not really ever looking for a different pass, it feels like. They know the system so well. It's either Barella gets it, he's looking for Dumfries, Dumfries plays it back, he's looking for Akanji or maybe Chala in the middle there. Very rarely do we see a different pass where he's slipping in, maybe that second striker. If Lautaro's coming in, he's trying to slip in the striker behind him, whether it's Pio or Turam. We very rarely see something like that. And it's the same on the left side with Mkhitaryan. A lot of the times it's just out to Dimarco or Bastoni, then back through to Bastoni and Çalhanoğlu. And we very rarely see, a little chip over the top to try and unlock and do something differently. And so Zielinski, he's coming in with a point to prove, trying to get more minutes in the team. And he is providing these different passes and stuff that's giving the defense something different to think about as well. And so I really enjoy seeing what Zielinski has brought the last 3 or 4 matches. And I think he needs to be in the Milan derby, the one starting. If he can just limit, it's like one game, one play a game, he holds the ball too long or plays a pass right into the opposition, and it really puts us under pressure. If he can limit that and play a pretty flawless game, I think we have a midfielder that is going to usurp Mkhitaryan and is going to make Sucic. It's going to make it hard for Sucic and even Barella to potentially. It's going to provide competition for them, and I think Zelensky is a class player. I mean, if you look back, in my opinion, over the last 8 years, maybe we can stretch it out to 9, because or we'll say 8 before last season. You know, you'd be hard pressed to find a midfielder over that 8 year span in Serie A that was better than Zielinski. The only other player I think you can say would be Barella, and he's on the squad. So this is a player we need to come good, and he will provide so much for the squad going into this title push. He was someone we missed last season. If we would have had a healthy Zelensky on form, getting a run of games, which is another fault from Inzaghi. He never, even when he was healthy, never got really a consistent run of games. If we would have had him towards the end of last season, I think we win the Scudetto, because he brings something different. He has quality to hit a shot outside of the box, where we saw against Verona, and then this match against um, Lazio. He has the quality to do this, and it's only going to be good for us moving forward. Grande Zielinski, I think we have a midfield three that we can really dominate not even Serie A, rest of Europe too. If Zelensky, Barella, and Çalhanoğlu, if Barella catches form and gets back at least 80% of what we know Barella has been in the past, we have one of the best midfields in all of Europe with those three, in my opinion. And then Sucic coming off, Mkhitaryan coming off, Fratesi, even though I'm not a big fan of him, coming in and providing something different. We have a really strong midfield, and I think we need to get Zielinski back and playing week in and week out in a consistent run of games. Grande Zielinski. But yeah, after that, 2-0, should have been 3-0. Still have roughly about 25 minutes left in the match. Thuram makes an appearance on for Lautaro. I think was a good decision to bring Lautaro off. He's going to get a lot of minutes over the international break, so good to have him have a rest. He worked his tail off, got a good goal. I think Lautaro had a really good game. We'll talk a little bit about his match after we finish talking about the game. But then Lazio, we knew we weren't going to escape super easily playing Lazio. It's always a tough match. Of course, they bring in Pedro. That's always the player that's going to be a danger man against us, like it was last season. And in the 77th minute, Lazio look like they pull a goal back. It's again a set piece. This is another thing I commented on Uncle Sharma's live thing after that Kairat match midweek. Set pieces are a problem now for Inter, and it's something that never was a problem really under Inzaghi, defending set pieces. But under Kivu, in this tactical tweak where we're doing a zonal marking on set pieces, it has become an issue. And it's something I think it's going to bite us in the ass, especially on these Champions League matches. You have teams like an Arsenal, namely Liverpool, have a lot of big bodies that we're going to be playing. Atletico, that's kind of one of the things they capitalize on too. Borussia, all of these teams that we're coming up against here in the last part of this Champions League group stage match, and then teams we will face further in the competition, they're going to see how easy it is to get chances off of set pieces against us. And I think it's at the point in the season now we need to say, hey, it's a failed experiment, this zonal marking, and we need to go back to what we were doing under Inzaghi. Um, and they get a chance off of set pieces or off a set piece. I think it was Gila off the back post, and he heads it, goes across, hits off the sidebar, and I don't know how it didn't cross the line. Luckily, we have the goal line technology that proved that it didn't. But in real lifetime action, I was 100% certain that that was a goal for Lazio. Um, and yeah, it's a set piece. I don't know what more you can say. Didn't really look too close in to see who was at fault, but this it's time and time again. Luckily, we haven't conceded too much from set pieces, but the chances, it's like every time a team has a free kick outside of the box or a corner, I'm clinched. I used to not, but now I'm tight butthole on these set pieces and corners because it seems like we concede way too many opportunities off of this. Luckily, not here. And then in the 87th minute, a huge opportunity again for Lazio. I don't remember if this was off a set piece or not, but Pellegrini somehow found his way through in on goal on Sommer one-on-one. It was a big save by Jan Sommer, really making himself big and stopping it. And I mean, honestly, Pellegrini should have done way better and scored here. But make no mistake about it, Jan Sommer saved the day here. And we go away with all 3 points. Before we get into the final thoughts, I didn't write this one down, but now that we're talking about Jan Sommer, that is a big topic. I feel like in the Inter world right now is the topic of Jan Sommer, and I wanted to touch on it. For me, I think everybody is being way too harsh on Jan Sommer. I think the goals that have been conceded recently, I think if you look, there's no goalkeeper. Maybe Thibaut Courtois or Donnarumma is saving them, but majority of the goals that he has let in this season, I don't think many goalkeepers in the world are able to save. And the argument of, well, he's just standing there, this is a big debate we had this week in my intergroup message because I'm the one, I think, in that group message that is the only Jan Sommer defender left. And everybody's big gripe is the fact that he just stands there on these goals, especially, if you see the goal midweek. But when the goals are unsavable, you want him to dive. I don't understand that. It's look at Provedel today for that Lautaro goal. He stood still and didn't attempt. Like sometimes it's just impossible goals that you're not going to save, and for you diving, it doesn't make any like. Maybe you get participation points if you dive. It's still a goal if you dive and let it in. I think it looks worse if you dive and you're a mile off of it, in my opinion. But the one thing you get with Sommer is his reactions, like on that Pellegrini save. He's one of the best still in the world at his age on 1v1 situation reactions, coming out and whatnot, and reacting to stuff super quickly, which cannot be overstated, especially on a team that gets beat transitionally a lot. And then I think his experience, I think his distribution is underrated as well. This season has seemed a little off, but over the past season and a half, his distribution is second to none, which is something we didn't realize when getting him, that he was going to be a great distributor of the ball. And I think just having that experience back there with a goalkeeper on a team that's pushing on so many fronts, it cannot be understated either. You need that experience between the sticks. That's maybe one of the most, if not the most important position to have a lot of experience and whatnot, is that goalkeeper position. So I'm a big Sommer fan. Like I said, I don't put many of the goals, if any, this season, minus maybe some on that Juve match, on Jan Sommer. I think a lot of it is, oh yeah, the midweek one, like I was saying, like people were blaming, or in my group message, not trying to throw you guys under the bus, but they were blaming Jan Sommer before they even mentioned anything about De Vrij, Dumfries, and who was the other one there? Maybe it was Akanji. There was three Inter defenders who just stood there and watched the Karat player come through with a header. Like, I don't understand how Jan Sommer is the one that you're blaming on this. And there's several situations that we've seen like this season where it's the defending and the midfield that should be the one at fault, not Jan Sommer. I think it's an easy and a lazy argument because we've seen it with Handanovic, how he kind of regressed a little bit. But I don't think we're really seeing that with Jan Sommer. I think we're seeing a goalkeeper that still makes big saves when called upon, and he's conceding goals that any goalkeeper in the world would concede. So that's just something I wanted to talk on or touch on before we got to these final thoughts. You guys let me know what you think of Jan Sommer and whatnot. I think we still need to, in the summer, move on and bring in a different goalkeeper. But I don't think we need to, A, rush in to bring in Pep Martinez, especially after what happened with him recently mentally, and B, just abandon Jan Sommer because I think he's still a top goalkeeper in the league and throughout Europe. So yeah, moving on to final thoughts. Performance was better than recent. Still not great, but the performance was good from Inter. And I think we suffocated Lazio, at least for the first 75 minutes of the match, with all the fouling and everything. We made it impossible for them to really build up and transition and everything. And I think that was a great call and tactic by Kivu. So good job on Kivu and good job from the squad. Number three, Lautaro positioning. This is something I said a minute ago. I want to talk about Lautaro. If you notice this match, he was dropping a lot deeper into the midfield to pick up the ball, and he was picking up different positions on the wings, it seemed like. So it was almost like more like we were playing like a 3-5-1-1 a lot of times, maybe, which is an interesting thing to see. I haven't seen it just do this really this season, and maybe I'm reaching here. Don't know if any of you guys picked up on that or not. But for me, I saw a little bit of positioning difference from Lautaro, which is refreshing to see because a lot of times we see those two strikers up top, 5 to 10 yards away from each other. And that's frustrating for me because when you're playing against the defense, I think, you got two defenders that one man can mark. It makes it really easy for that back line of the opposition to stay organized and defend like that. So seeing him pick up positions in different areas and keep the back line on their toes the entire time, I think is something that was refreshing and nice to see and would like to see maybe a little more going forward. Man of the match, I think DiMarco ended up getting it. You could maybe say Moni deserved it as well. DiMarco was a great shout. He's been the man on form so far this season. Like I said earlier, that ball was absolutely brilliant. And then Boni, his hold up play today, some of the, getting out of pressure, like I'd mentioned, Zielinski does really well. Boni did really great today, dribbling out of pressure, relieving not only himself, but the rest of the team so we can get forward. It was a really mature performance from Boni. And then he wrapped up everything with that tap in goal from a brilliant cross from DiMarco. So between those two, I think they did really well. I think Acerbi surprisingly did really well today against Buladia. I think that's a striker that maybe could give him some troubles, but I think Acerbi did great today. Maybe the fouling helped him, so he wasn't getting pulled out. Maybe that was why Kivu did the fouling tactic, was so Acerbi didn't get caught out in transition since we were playing such a high line. Now that I'm thinking about that, that makes sense. But he wasn't caught out high up the pitch that much. And I think he did really well winning a lot of ball and everything today. So good to see Acerbi back and playing great. And I think Barella, like I mentioned earlier, he had a great match as well. So good to see all of these guys on form today. And then we'll finish up mentioning a thing that I thought was an interesting thing to see. And we've seen it recently too in another match. I think it might have been the Fiorentina match, but Carlos Augusto coming in for Denzel Dumfries and playing right wing back is interesting. Where Luis Enrique, I don't think he's played terribly, but like if you watch Uncle Sharma, I'm really shouting him out this whole episode. Shout out to Uncle Sharma, but he has said the past couple episodes about how he hasn't played bad, but he hasn't done enough to really give us any confidence or put any pressure on Dumfries, which is a shame because Dumfries has been way off form this year. Bringing in Augusto, I think Augusto played pretty well in that right wing back position and didn't look uncomfortable with his right foot. And it's something to think about moving forward. Maybe Augusto is an answer potentially to put a little bit of pressure on Dumfries over there because DiMarco is in great form. Bastoni's never going to get usurped by anybody as long as he's with the club. And why not put pressure on Dumfries, who hasn't had a great start to the campaign? And it's interesting because look at like Spinazzola for Napoli. He's a right-footed player playing left wing back. So why can't a left-footed predominantly player and Carlos Augusto play right wing back? So that's something interesting to look out for and see if that progresses any further. I think, like I said, Augusto had a great match coming in and did some good things. So maybe there's a solution there as far as competition goes for Dumfries, and maybe that brings out a better form of Dumfries moving forward. So keep an eye on that as well. This was a good match where we won, and there was a bunch of different things. I've been hard on Kivu, lately, saying he's just doing the same things Inzaghi did, and it's frustrating. In particular, like that Napoli match where there was no different ideas. It felt like this match was a little different. It felt like there was a couple different tweaks and stuff that he did, and maybe the whole coaching staff as a whole. Because if you watch matches, Kivu is on the sideline a lot, but he's constantly talking to Palombo and Kolarov the entire game. So it's almost like a triumvirate. I think we have as a coach more so than just Kivu being the head coach, which he is. He's the one doing the press conferences and everything. But I think it's more of like a triumvirate there, very Romanista of Kivu, where he came from before, if you know anything about Roman history. So very interesting to see, and we'll see if we continue with these in-match changes and tweaks and stuff, because I think in Italy, this league, you have to do stuff like that to win matches. So we'll see where that goes. To wrap all this up, we're top of the league, like I said at the beginning, top of the league, tied on points with Roma, but our goal differential is way better. So going into the international break, being top of the league is big. We, after coming out of this, have Milan, we have Atletico Madrid, and then we have Pisa. Two tough matches. I think Milan, they've been off form recently, and we can definitely take it to Milan and win this match. And then Atletico at the Wanda. It's always tough to go to the Wanda and win, but I think we can win and beat Atletico and get 15 points out of the Champions League phase, and then play Pisa to wrap up November and get 9 points out of 9. especially these are big 9 points up for grab, or 6 points, I guess, in the league up for grabs, because Napoli, their next two matches are Atalanta and Roma. They're kind of off form. I mean, Atalanta's not really on form either, but they're always a danger team. Anybody who goes and plays there, it's tough. And then Roma, they're on really good form, not conceding goals, and they're tied with us top of the league. So if Napoli slip up there, that would be huge if we get all 6 points. Atalanta have Napoli and Fiorentina. Fiorentina, not well, but again, they have quality in the side. Juve have Fiorentina and Cagliari. Juve without Bremer is a side that is not the Juve with Bremer. It goes without saying. So Juve could be had by either one of those teams. And then Milan, they have us and Lazio, two not easy matches. They could slip up, especially if we beat them. We could start to create a little gap there. And then finally, Roma have Cremonese, who have kind of started slipping off of form a little bit, but still potentially a danger team in the Serie A as far as lower teams go, and then Napoli. So, these next two league matches could be huge for Inter as far as, what the table could look like going into December and January. You can probably hear they're doing some trimming on the trees. So I'll wrap this up before it gets too loud. But these next two matches are huge, and I think we're at the point of the season. Usually, January is where the league table really starts to take form, and you see who's the contenders and pretenders. So we still got a little bit of time left before I think that we know who we're going to be competing with for the Scudetto. But I think these next two matches are big as far as we can create a little gap before we even get to that point of the season, and give some pressure, and make it where we can maybe slip up if it comes to that later on in the season. So very important next two matches for Inter, and really the rest of the league as a whole, if you were looking at the table and whatnot. So big 3 points against Lazio. It was a great victory from Inter. Top of the league. We'll try and figure out something new to do next weekend since it's an international break, and we'll put out a little bit of content. We'll see. But I appreciate all the support, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, comment, all of that stuff. And as always, Forza Inter.